changes are there. And there are some of the proposals that were made earlier that are on the CRC website. I am very aggravated by the fact that a consultant to the CRC was able to create this document at the end of May, and as Appendix B, devote half of what is in the document to the submissions made by members of the CRC, and that none of these are in the public domain. I find this outrageous. I find this a contradiction to the role and purpose of the town government website. And having been one of the parties that helped create the John W. McCormick School of Policy Studies, which was originally the McCormick Institute at UMass Boston, I find this utterly a failure in public service, that a consultant would be the only source buried in a report of what should be in the public domain of publicly submitted information. This is an example of not just the failure of government, but of what I call consultant capture with regard to, you know, the assistance that's being provided. It's very difficult for the public to remain informed, much less express their voice when we don't know what's going on.
Thank you, Marcy. Okay. That's actually a pretty good segue to the next slide. So is that possible? Okay. Let's see. Is someone going to make that happen? Okay.
Yes, we're working on it.
Happy thought.
You willed it into existence. Just
well, I've been called a force of nature before, but all right. So we've got, yeah, so here we go. Let's take a look at the next slide. Go down, there should be more below that. Aha, there we go. Excellent. Okay, so right now there are 2 meetings left, June 15th and June 29th. And a note that there's a lot of work to do. And so they have extended the time of the meetings from 6 to 9. So a 3-hour commitment on each of those days. There's some conversation that perhaps they'll go into July. I think that's probably unlikely, but not, that's Tia talking. I have no prognostication on that, but that has been offered as a possibility. There are, you can see in this area, you know, we've gone through, you know, 1, 2, and 3, and now there's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 in 2 days. And there's proposals that we can see in the memos, and then a set of other proposals that the public has submitted as well, whose ideas may be reflected in these proposals that are visible in the Collins memo or may not be. We know that the next meeting will have at least 3 key discussions, and it's going to be regarding balance of power, transparency, and accountability. So, you know, I mentioned them before. The next meeting, June 15th, powers and duties of the town council president. They defer to vote on this. Whether to include specific language in the charter about the town manager's performance review, and the formation of the resident advisory committee. So these are issues that you care about. It's really important to get to these meetings, because what we're also seeing is that there's live markup, and that the folks, you know, the folks that are showing up, the council members are offering up live updates, as are members of the public that are participating in the meeting. The Collins memo that Tony referenced, and there should be a link to, outlines areas for priority discussion. And the topics that are emphasized in the memo are budget and capital outlay, composition of the charter committee, and there's also an opportunities out there to discuss the timing of the next charter review, changing it from years that end in 0 to years that end in other numbers. The idea being that we would shorten the review, the time of review between this one and the next one to see how things are going. We've made some changes, and, there's an opportunity then to say, okay, we want to test it for 2, 3, 5 years. I don't know what the right number is, but we'd like to, the committee could discuss that and say, okay, we'd like to see how this is going and kick the tires a bit. We don't know when the preamble discussion will occur. The preamble subcommittee has been working very hard. They intend to have a final draft at its Monday, June 7th meeting, which is tomorrow, and then send it to the CRC after that. Right now, it's not showing up on the Collins memo as a discussion point. Janice mentioned that there are, what Tony said, there's 106 proposals for the CRC. Janice has done the data on it. Many of them have been summarized by Collins in a non-charter ideas document. And I don't know, we put a link of that in the chat, but we should. It might be, for folks who have taken the time to submit their proposals, come to these meetings, have voiced their ideas, concerns, possible solutions. One thing to do would be to take a look at the Collins memo all the way through, reading what every counselor is offering up and proposing, every counselor and every committee member. Also take a look at the ideas that have been put in what I'm calling the ordinance parking lot. These are ideas that won't be considered for the charter, but they're still good ideas. And ordinances, then have to, I'm not exactly sure how an ordinance gets started. I'm fairly sure that it will take public commitment to stay on top of that to make sure that these ideas continue to have full merit. Because once it is an ordinance is proposed, it has to go to public hearing, and there's another opportunity for public participation. So I encourage you to review both of these, and with the question in mind is that, are your ideas and proposals still up for discussion? Or, have they been placed in this parking lot? And then, Tony, offered up that, proposals, council committee proposals for sections 1, 2, and 3 are not part of the Collins memo. And is there still room for addition or conversation in these areas? As an observer, my sense would be no, given the tight timeline, but perhaps members of the committee would have a different viewpoint on that. Let's take a look at I think we've got another slide, future committee meetings. Yeah, here it is. This is kind of a quick summary of it. As I kind of went through this June 15th, the powers and duties, we've gone through the June 15th one, June 15th in 2019. This is what we can tell from the Collins memo. So kind of a recap of what I just said. What do we have looking ahead? What's next? Why don't we take a look at this next slide? And this is what we're calling the life cycle of a vote. This is capturing an idea and, what's happening when these proposals are coming through this committee. So, it's our hope in this is that this gives you some context for seeing where and how you can continue to remain involved and pursue these ideas. So I've got one question in the chat. Is there a proposal IN as a charter proposal for city manager performance review? That is accountability to the city residents. There was discussion in the charter review in the CRC about adding in the opportunity for the public to weigh in on the town manager's performance. This is part of the language that the Collins Center is going back to offer up some ideas on that will be put up for a vote at June 15th. So it did come up for conversation. Where it will come out, I think, will depend upon the conversation at the next CRC meeting. Okay. These next two meetings, we talked about the proposals. The proposals are going to be put up. There's live editing. Attending is good. You get the opportunity to have your voice heard. What will happen is the proposal is put up there. The CRC is going to vote on it. And they're voting on it as it happens. One open question is there going to be a final vote to accept the whole thing? Or is it once they've gotten to section 8 and they're done, you know, dusted and done, it then goes to the town council. When it goes, you know, as they're doing this, they're keeping a close eye on changes that might require state review of the state legislature. And it seems like the only area that they have any concern about, or not even concern, but they've got an eye on, is if there are significant changes to the powers and duties of the town council president. So that will come up at the next meeting on June 15th. I did not, as an observer, did not sense a strong will from the committee for substantive changes that would require state a review of the state legislature, in part because of the timeline. After the CRC finishes reviewing the charter, likely at the end of June, maybe the beginning of July, it then goes to the town council for review and a vote. So that's the third white dot there. They need to complete this process, if I heard it correctly, by the end of August for the town clerk to finalize the ballot language in September for the vote in November. There then is an open question, which is what will show up on the ballot? And this is what, you know, state law will allow either of these two scenarios. Does the, not only does the town council, when it comes to the town council, are they going through each section and voting line by line on the changes in the charter, or are they just doing an up or down vote? Again, as an observer, if they're allowing themselves July and August, it would strike me that they're going through change by change on a vote with the town council to approve what the CRC has done, or to review and approve what the CRC has done. That same question is for what shows up on the ballot. When we get the ballots in November, is that going to be a line by line listing of every change in the charter that every voter gets to vote on? Or will it be a whole package, you know, on the ballot, you know, and I don't know what the language is, but, you know, do you vote, you know, vote for support of all the changes in the charter, and they have the whole charter. I don't remember how the ballot is set up, but the essential difference, is it line by line or is it the whole thing? You know, so are you having 20 different votes on every change to the charter, or one vote for accepting the charter as changed or not accepting the charter as changed? That's the basic overview of what the process is going forward. I see two hands up. Marcy, I don't know if that's a legacy hand or whether you have another question. And then I see that was a legacy hand, and I see Anne's got a question. Anne.
So I just wanted to respond to what you were saying. Excuse me. Just wanted to respond about the bundling or not bundling of chart on the ballot. So I've asked Mike Ward this question repeatedly. I got a pretty good answer out of him last week, which was we could unbundle. But then Mark jumped in and he, wanted to move the meeting along, which I definitely understand. But in my mind, he absolutely left it open to discussion about how much of this, is it going to be one bundle and an up or down vote, or are there going to be elements that we can pull out? And it doesn't have to be each change. Like, for example, preamble could be separated, and then the rest of it could be, a second question. So there might only be two questions. Mike Ward cautioned us about doing too many votes. Do you want to vote for this? Do you want to vote for that? Do you want to vote for this? He said, that's bad. He said, if there's something particular or a couple of things that maybe you're concerned about, his approach was that is something that, we should talk about and is possible. So knowing kind of how Mark is, I wouldn't be surprised if he wants this whole thing to go in a bundle as one vote, or, if there are real concerns or real questions, that he would maybe separate out, one or two things. So I just wanted to provide that insight and feedback as far as my interpretation of how Mike and Mark responded to the bundling question. Thanks.
Thanks, Anne. That's really helpful to understand that it doesn't necessarily need to be one or the other. There's a question in the chat about why is voting bad?
Yeah, it was Anne, to your what Anne was offering up. Like, did Mark say why it was bad that we were voting? He perceived voting too many times to be a bad. Was there something?
Yes. Yep.
What was
actually Mike Ward spoke to that, and he said that it can become overwhelming to voters, and it becomes confusing that there are so many different things. And I understand that if you're going down the ballot and voting for a couple of
I'm struggling to understand that as well.
So that was their main, as far as I recall. There were definitely other people in the meeting, but as far as I recall, the concern was overwhelming the voters and creating confusion by having too many line items.
Interesting. Thank you for clarifying that for me.
Okay, we've got time for two very quick questions. Ilana and Janice, I saw your hand was up. So we'll take
just to add to what Anne was saying, not only about confusing the voters, but that it might just overwhelm and turn them off, and then they might not vote on that line on the charter part of the ballot at all. And you just get more blanks and less votes overall, which brought the conversation back to, can it be just 2 or 3 big chunks, maybe not individual line items, but say the preamble and then everything else.
Thank you, Ilana. Janice?
Yeah, I was just to echo what Alana said. I actually tend to agree that if we put every single item, it would be overwhelming and people would sort of just skip over it, not vote, or not know what they were voting for necessarily if it was too much to read. But you can break it down by section or by article or lump it in different ways besides just all or nothing or each individual suggestion. So I think there's probably a happy medium in there if the CRC and Collins are willing to work together and come up with a plan C on that.
That's great. That's helpful. And then John has offered up a viewpoint in the chat. The State Secretary of State's Elections Division will probably offer an opinion on the form of the ballot question. And it's generally one umbrella vote. That's helpful, John. Thank you. Okay. Good questions. Last 2 meetings are key. I think at this point, what I want to do is turn this over to Larry, who can introduce and welcome our expert panel. Thank you everyone for your questions and your ideas and your work and energy in offering proposals to the CRC.
Okay, thank you, Tia. And we can probably go back to stop the screen share for a moment. We'll come to that question shortly. We're very pleased today to have Anthony Donato and Leo Martin with us. Both are members of the Charter Review Committee and are going to provide good insights related to Articles 2 and 3 and probably more. After we take a few minutes where they will share their responses to a question, we will open it up to the questions that you have and the comments that any of you here today would like to offer up. Let me just do a brief introduction and thank you both for sharing your bios with us. Anthony is a practicing attorney and a lifelong resident of Watertown. He and his wife Kelly live on Arden Road. Anthony was first elected to the town council in 2017. He is a counselor at large. He is the chair of the Committee on Rules and Ordinances. He is the vice chair of the Committee on Public Works and the secretary of the Committee on Budget and Fiscal Oversight. Anthony is also a member and a past president of the Rotary Club, and he serves on the board of the Watertown Boys and Girls Club. Welcome, Anthony, and thank you for everything you've been doing for the Watertown community for many years. Leo is a retired geologist who worked on the design and construction of large infrastructure projects that are related to power and environmental facilities. He and his wife, Joan, have lived in Watertown for over 40 years, knows the town very well. When their children were in school, he was an active member of the parent-teacher organizations in the Phillips School, Cunniff, and the middle school, as well as getting very involved in youth soccer and youth basketball. Once their children were in high school or college, he applied and was appointed to Watertown's Conservation Commission and is currently the chair of the Conservation Commission. So welcome, Leo, and thank you for many decades of your contributions to our community. So just as we get started, I wanted to remind you something you've heard us say before and briefly earlier. Over time, Watertown Forwards and people who have participated with us have created the platform of ideas, which is kind of an evolving list of collective thoughts, many of which have shown up in proposals, some of our proposals and some of CRC members' proposals. So that's it's in the chat. I think, Tiffany, you put it in the chat. If not, you can put it in there now. And we just encourage you to take a look at it or keep it in mind as you hear from Anthony and Leo. I'm going to start by asking them a question, and then each of them in turn will have 5 minutes to respond. I will keep track of the time, so when it gets near your 5 minutes, I'll give you an alert so you can finish your final thought about that. And then after we've heard from each of you for about 5 minutes, we'll open it up to everyone, and might be easier either in the reactions or in participants, depending on how your Zoom setup goes, that you can kind of put your hand up so we can see how many people are waiting to say something. So here's the question, and let me read it. We could screen share it, Nicole, if you want to do that so everybody can see it as well. Given the discussions around the importance of transparency, disclosure, communication, and equity, including what you've heard from residents in public comments and proposals, what are at this time your top 2 to 3 priorities for charter revision that you'd like to see decided upon and implemented over the next several CRC meetings? And why do you say that? And either of you can go first. We didn't decide this ahead of time. So would one of you like to get us started in response to that question?
I'm happy to defer to you, Mr. Martiner. If you'd like, I can take this.
I'll go, Anthony. I'll let you go for. I'll let you follow.
Okay.
So you'll be much more eloquent than I. He's a more experienced counselor. I tend to put my foot in my mouth sometimes. So you know, this started for me. I'll go through a little history, and I know some of the things I bring up we voted on last month, but last meeting I should say. But it started with an interview with Mark Sedaris on getting on this commission the first time, and when I met with Mark, I mentioned that we need to know what's going well and what's not going well in our town. And then once we figure that out, we can move forward. And through this process, I think we've found through a lot of your help, what we're lacking in. And lacking is pretty well identified as communication and transparency. And the other one, which I'll talk about, is also the power of the council over the town manager. And so I think we wanted to, those were items that were clearly identified as action items for the CRC, for the review, the charter review. And it has also been clear that the manager and his role as financial guy has been super. He's done a fantastic job for us with regard to finances. I don't know how he does it, but well, I do know how he does it. But he's been able to, without overrides, build two new elementary schools, upgrade the third, and build a new high school without going for an override. It's pretty amazing. There's a lot of things coming into that. Our town is growing so much; it provides benefits that we have an influx of higher tax dollars. So I mean, it is there, but it's just the manipulation by the town manager and the existing town council members, and four of them are present now. It's to their benefit that their foresight that we're in the situation we are now financially. But so we move pretty slowly through this process, but we clearly have the guidance of where we need to go. And I think last meeting, we voted to get better communications to the town council. I think those recommendations were much out of the Amherst charter of a meeting, a joint meeting with the town manager or the manager, because I think we might be a city, a manager and the president to have a joint meeting of a state of the city address. All these large cities have it. I think we need to do it. And I think it needs to be a joint meeting between the two of those members to present that to our town members. And I know people have said that at the inauguration, at least in the last two inaugurations, President Sedaris has given a brief statement, and it's only maybe 10 or 15 minutes, but it gives a direction. And I think if you had gone to those, you get a sense that at least we know where we're going to go. And I think that's the prime thing of these presentations is find out where we're going and how we're going to get there. So I think that's a big issue, and I think we made a step forward when we did that. And then the next one would be again out of the Amherst charter. Amherst is one of the latest charters to be written, so it's really a great guide for us. And it had a meeting of a public forum. I think they had two. I think we were discussing one. And the public forum is a place where residents can go and ask questions and maybe get an answer. We currently have public forums at all our town council meetings at the beginning and at the end. You're limited to 2 minutes, and usually you don't get an answer, at least at that meeting. So I think it's beneficial to have present a topic and get an answer when you present that issue. And I think in order to do that, I know these details have to be worked out, maybe not in the charter, but certainly later on, is that residents will have to submit a list of their concerns so that the town manager and the council will be able to address those concerns in an effective way. Otherwise, it's going to be just I can't answer that today. So I think we need to have it needs to be a pre-selection or pre-submitting those comments. But those are things that need to be worked out as we go forward. So what do I have there? So, I think we talk about communication, and no, I've been on the Conservation Commission for a long time. I've met with the counselors. I've never had a problem with any counselor with getting back to me. So communication to me may be different than a lot of residents. I know who to, and I do know people on the planning department, so they will give me answers when I actually talk to them. So I have had a different maybe feeling about communication within the council, but I do understand there's a big problem with communication.
Thanks, Leo. Maybe you want to just take a moment to give us your final thought for now, and you'll have a chance to say a little more during the question and answer time.
5 minutes went pretty fast. You sure that's only 5?
Yeah, really.
Okay, so I think we need to critically improve what we're focus and where we're going is to improve communication. I think most of us have read. I think Janice said they had 38 pages of comments. I've read through them. I'm sure most other people on that committee have read them. And so I think by the end of this period, we will have addressed many of those comments. Those that we addressed in the charter. Some of them are ordinance issues, but I think we'll get through. I think what we do will address most of them. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Leo. That was very, very helpful and very clear, and you did your presentation just fine.
My foot into my mouth,
huh? Anthony, why don't you tell us what you're thinking about? What are some of your top priorities for charter revision for the meetings that are ahead?
So I think first and foremost, I want to make sure we get through the full charter. I know it's on the calendar and we're projected to do that. These meetings tend to run pretty quickly. They go by fast. So part of my and we had the schedule up there earlier as to what steps need to be taken by when. An answer a better answer I would like to get from Mike Ward in the Collins Center is, if we don't make substantial changes to the role of the council president that need to be approved by the state legislature, would that then give us a little bit of a cushion that if we need to go into July to address some of these items, we might have that time? I know Tony had made a proposal to see about possibly extending the review beyond the end of the year. So maybe some sort of a middle ground between this and that, because there have been so many great ideas, and we haven't touched on a lot of them. So I want to make sure that we get to them. I think the other thing that's really important to me, and it touches on something Mr. Martin just said and that Tia had mentioned earlier, is we've now got this running list of items that for one reason or another have been deemed to be non-charter items. And how do we go about addressing them when the charter review committee ends? And one thing I think we did a better job of this year is, this is somewhat similar to every year we do, the counselors do budget priority guidelines. And that's a meeting, several meetings with the Budget and Fiscal Oversight Committee. And in the past, there were ideas suggested by counselors that didn't make it through. And then they just kind of sat there in limbo, and well, what do we do about them? And in the past, we didn't do a lot about them. So one thing that the BFO did a good job with this past year is we made those items specific action items for the council to make referrals on. So I would like to do a similar thing with that list that's been generated, because again, a lot of time and effort has gone into that list by members of the CRC, but members of this group and members of the community at large. So I don't want those to just end, or discussions on those to end when this review process completes. It could be, a referral to, in some regards, rules and ordinances, but out of that BFO discussion, there were referrals to human services that Tony chairs. He's, ongoing with that to look into our health department and what the needs of the health department are, and how can we better serve our community through possibly increased funding for health department. So I think it's incumbent on us to come up with a plan as to how we are going to address those items that we can't reach as part of this process. I think that's, vitally important. And I hope that is something that I think, to a question Tia asked, I think we are going to vote, the CRC will vote to move all of the approved changes forward to the full council. And as part of the recommendation from the CRC, I'd like to see a formal request that the council come up with a process to address those items on the resident list that haven't been addressed. So I think those are kind of my two most important things moving forward here, thinking we might only have 2 or 3 meetings left.
Thank you. Thanks for that, Anthony. A lot of important issues have come up along the way, and it sounds like you want to make sure that they are responded to in some appropriate and meaningful way over time. Again, thanks to both of you for getting us started with this. I'd ask all of us now to reflect on what you just heard in the first part of our meeting today, and also from Leo and Anthony, and what questions do you have for them that they could help share their perspectives on, and perhaps some comments that you'd like to offer. I'd encourage you to start with the questions, because we're happy to have our panelists with us, and we'd like to direct this important conversation to them. Who has, when you're ready, just use the participants icon at the bottom or reactions, and let's see if we've got some
I see Anne's
comments
hand
up.
up.
I see Anne has a hand up. Okay, so Anne, why don't you get us started with your question or your comment?
Thanks so much. Anthony, having you here today is great. And as the chair of the Rules and Ordinances, you know, I'm interested to hear your thoughts and your take. We have had a lot of discussion about issues that don't reach the charter level. And, you know, I fully understand that, you know, we don't want to handcuff ourselves by getting too specific in the charter. But, you know, the easiest example, I think, is the compensation for town councilors. But there are a myriad of other issues that we have really pushed to ordinances. So, I think Larry mentioned it before. Maybe you can describe what it takes to get something referred to ordinance, and what is that process? And then what, how can residents continue to stay involved? Because there are a lot of things that I really, care about that I'm not going to be able to help address or change on charter review. So, hoping that they're going to get addressed in ordinances, what's that process and how can we continue to stay involved? Thanks.
Sure. So I think every ordinance starts out with a referral. So it's a referral to a particular committee. It doesn't necessarily have to be rules and ordinances. I'm thinking about with the oh my gosh, and I'm sorry, with the new cultural. We're doing the culture and arts plan, and there's going to be a committee that is formed to help oversee that. And that ordinance was worked on by economic development and planning. So it doesn't necessarily have to come through rules and ordinances, but they all start as a referral to a committee. And then based on what that committee decides, it may then be something that has to go in front of rules and ordinances, or it might be something that specific committee can work out, and then that committee can bring forward a proposed ordinance. It's also going on with the Public Works Committee right now. We are trying to revamp. I'm not sure at what point it disbanded, but there used to be a recycling committee in town that disbanded. I want to say maybe 10 years ago. Where now the Public Works Committee is going through a process where we're trying to, figure out how we can increase opportunities for organic recycling in town, simple recycling programs. But as part of that referral, and I believe it was Tony's referral, he wanted to revamp this Citizens Advisory Committee on recycling. So that is being worked at the Public Works level. So it doesn't get shoehorned just to rules and ordinances. A lot of them do come through rules and ordinances, such as short-term rentals. And, other times there might be a joint referral to rules and ordinances. And we've got one that was recently made, rules and ordinances and town personnel, that's going to be looking at an idea that came out of the charter review about hiring additional staff for the town council. So it really, to sum it up, it really just starts as a referral. So I'm trying to see, I think the chats as they're coming through, if an individual, a resident in town has an idea for something that they would like to be referred to committee, they can reach out to any of the counselors. There is the town council rules outline a certain procedure that a town councilor has to go through before that referral gets on the agenda. But certainly any resident can always request, a town councilor bring a referral forward, as long as the counselor, complies with the town council rule. That would get put on a town council agenda, and then you would need 5 votes of the council to move it on to whichever committee that referral would fall within the jurisdiction of whichever is the committee.
Thank you, Anthony. That's kind of good government 101 for a number of us to understand how all this really works. Leo, given that you've been an active member of the community for many years, I wonder if you would want to offer a comment about that, or an observation, or any additional thought.
No, well, I agree with Anthony. I think there's been actually there's been some movement on those requests already. I think in order to improve response from the councils, I think they've already discussed or gone to subcommittee a 311 number. So I think the councils are looking at some of these things that have been brought up and trying to implement them right away. And I might be wrong, but as we got 4 councilors here, they can always chime in. But I think you'll see that maybe I'm an optimist as well. I think you'll see these things change. I think there's a lot of great comments, and I think some of them will be brought up to subcommittees, and maybe they'll make it forward to an ordinance. I mean,
great.
I hope to see that.
Okay, well, thank you. And I know many of us who've gotten energized through this process are going to kind of keep an eye on all of this as well.
I think if I may,
yeah.
just one more thing is that
sure.
presence at meetings. I mean, I didn't always used to go to town council meetings, but I've been trying to push certain things, and I go to town council meetings, and I think I know all the councilors pretty well. So I think presence, seeing your face makes a big difference when you go to a council meeting. And I know it's all been remote lately, but even going to the council chambers, it just helps. It's another chance for conversation, another chance to contact and get things done. You just got to go to meetings. You can't, and they know when you're going, so it helps.
Great, thank you very much. Connie, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Sure, thank you. So I'll state the obvious. It's really wonderful I am amazed by the work that's been done by Watertown Forward as well as CRC. I share a similar concern that Anthony brought up about loose ends. We only have 2 meetings left. If the June 15th looks pretty packed, the last item on that is the preamble with a question mark by it. And then on the 29th, the remaining pieces. And I think what happens is that things slide to the next one when people make comments and suggestions. It takes that amount of time to really think through it and create both the right proposal as well as the right prose. So, and I know it's not about the prose, it's much more about the idea. But I would love clarification about this. My understanding is that none of these, and correct me if I'm wrong, would require legislative approval, that then we would have more time in July and August if we needed a wrap-up meeting to make sure that we've done right by the work that's been done by the community. So I'm wondering whether there's a plan for that. And I know Anne has presented some ideas about that as well.
Okay, either Anthony or Leah, you want to respond to Connie's concern about some kind of a wrap up during the summer, getting ready for things to get to the town council and then to the voters?
Sure, and I think that is a little bit of an unknown right now because we haven't got to the end of the actual charter. But again, I think to your point about whether or not, I guess the big question is how much time do we actually have? If we've got, if the town clerk doesn't have to finalize the language and send it off to the Secretary of State until, sometimes towards the end of August, does that give us a little wiggle room in July if we need it? And I think a lot of that really comes down to what needs legislative approval. I know that at, maybe 1 or 2 of the meetings, Ann Fitzpatrick had actually suggested, well, can we almost, split the process? If there is something that needs legislative approval, send that off and then see about, working to kind of finalize those other outstanding items, tie up any sort of loose ends. I think that's really something that we're going to have to figure out here over the course of the next 2 meetings. Now, with regard to, these items on this running list of not charter quote unquote items. I think that is really, again, that might just come as a, almost a blanket referral to the council to review that list and move those items forward to whatever committee would be appropriate. Because I'm hopeful we'll get through the charter and all of the revisions to the charter that the CRC actually has to act on. And then, with the direction from the CRC to the full council about trying to work on these other items and just don't let them slip. I think that's hopefully how we make sure there are no loose ends.
Thank you for that. And Leo, would you want to
No,
either
no.
comment on anything Anthony said about that or
No,
say anything in addition?
I agree with Anthony, and I think, we're sort of taking direction from the Collins Center and how long it's going to take if we have to go to the legislature to have approval. So I think, it's just work your way backwards from what we have to do administratively to get to the last meeting. And we got to remember that the town council has to vote on this, so that they need a meeting in August. I don't think you meet once in August, Anthony, correct?
Yeah, just once in August, correct.
Unless you have a special meeting.
Correct.
Okay, thank you both for that. Does anybody else have a question or a comment at this time that you want to pursue? Looks like Marcy, your hand is up. Go ahead.
Yeah, Larry, there are actually 3 questions in the chat, starting
There
with
are, huh?
Marcy. Yeah,
Yeah, I had
Okay.
messaged Larry
Oh,
for a
okay.
few.
That's why we have a team here. Go ahead. Okay. So why don't you go ahead with a couple of the questions that are in the chat, Tiffany? We'll go with those and we'll get back to Marcy.
well, that
Sure.
was the first question. That's probably why she's raising her hand, I'm assuming.
Ah, okay.
Marcy, were you going to raise that? Otherwise, I was going to raise Nancy's.
Yeah, I'd like to raise it only because I think it's an umbrella that could capture or cover a lot of the parking lot issues or the cutting room floor issues or whatever the non-charter related issues are. And that is there any thought that might be given to using a process of reorganization or restructuring town government to accommodate some of the policy concerns that have been raised that are likely to continue to be deemed non-charter related? I say that because I worked on that in the Boston Public Schools in the school desegregation case, and that was a vehicle for accomplishing things that you just otherwise would not have been possible. That section 6.1, this is for Tony and Anthony and for Leo, not for Tony, but for Anthony and for Leo. 6.1 allows for reorganization by ordinance. 6.2 allows for reorganization by administrative code. I guess my question is, as we think about things in the future, things that are referred, things that might come out through another process, what are your thoughts regarding the public weighing in on reorganization opportunities, as well as the high level expertise that's out there now as many other municipalities seek to address questions like public safety, police advisory councils, so on and so on, that don't fall within the charter domain per se, but speak directly to restructuring town government? Thank you.
Okay, that's a rich topic. Either of you want to offer a thought about other ways that things could get done that are perhaps a little different from the current structure we have and the current processes we use?
Well, I guess, Marcy, I don't know if maybe you can just, and I understand your question, but where we voted to keep the city manager form of government, are you talking about departments that report to the manager? What would you be looking to have reorganized?
Let's say there was a concern about bolstering diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is widespread. We know that. And also a concern about more accountable public safety. We know that. And there are ways in which there might be a new office of XYZ or a new advisory group of ABC. These are typically seen as within the executive branch. untouchable. However, because the town manager reports to the council and the charter provides for reorganization plans introduced by ordinance, that the town council may, by ordinance, reorganize, consolidate, or abolish any existing town agency in whole, in part, or establish new ones, or prescribe the functions of new town agencies. Might that be a hidden asset in the charter that doesn't require any change, but in practice would be implemented in a different way? Instead of relying on the town manager to say, here's my reorg plan, you actually take the initiative and say, yo, residents of Watertown, we want to look at expanding equity and diversity inclusion throughout the department, including the police department, including the fire department. We want more disclosure. We want more this, we want more that. And have that be part of, you know, the quote unquote reorganization. I mean, I personally see that as like a sleeper opportunity that exists between charter law and checks and balances is traditionally implemented. So I just offer that as both a beacon and a boost to think about in terms of, you might find in this environment, that is a way to handle a lot of the referrals and really make it matter.
So Marcy, if I understand your comments, and then maybe we'll take some additional comments or
Yeah.
questions from others, that
Please.
there may
I
be
don't
some
mean to take
opportunity here with all of these things that are not being addressed in the charter right now. They're kind of bit on this long list to do some out of the box thinking about some new ways to approach some of these issues. And maybe we need to have some additional conversation about how would residents or other people actually initiate a fresh look at some of these items that could be handled in some other way from the way we are currently doing it.
Out of the organizational box thinking.
There you
Thank
go.
you very much.
So we'll leave it that as some interesting food for thought.
I guess, Larry,
And
if I could just real quick.
yeah, sure.
Both of those two items that Marcy brought up are subject to current referrals. One is the personnel and town organizations, and the other is the public safety. So I suppose if at the end of the day, when those are reported out of committee, if residents weren't happy with the results, I suppose this would be another tool that the council could use. But personnel and town organization is working on some issues of equity in town. I know Tiffany was at one of the meetings earlier this year, and then public safety, which Lisa chairs, I believe she's on this call, has had, I think, 2 meetings already, and they've got plans to continue to meet throughout the summer. And I think that committee plans to meet more frequently moving forward. So I think, you know, within the current structure, I think we're trying to address those issues, but certainly, you know, the council can use any tool that it has if residents are not happy with the results of those referrals.
Okay, great. Thank you, Anthony, for that perspective. Let's see, I see Alana's hand up, but I want to go back to Tiffany because you were looking at the sequence of people who wanted to jump
Yes,
in the chat. So who's next?
Nancy, are
Okay.
you, my chat box is too big. Where you at, girl? There you are.
Go ahead, Nancy.
I was just going to drop something in the chat and run away, but my general point was that I feel as if we need, given how much importance we're putting on the ordinance process, and I really appreciate Anthony's comment about wanting to not let that all get lost, the ideas that have come up as part of the charter discussion. But I think there's and I think this goes up to some of what Marcy was saying. There's also an issue of as part of our regular governance practices, how do we make more effective the citizen involvement in encouraging referrals, possibly undertaking petitions, and then tracking what happens? Because I feel as if it's very hard for citizens in general to know what's happened to a referral, to stay on top of it. And I think some of it is just keeping track of reporting, making available on the website, et cetera, that kind of thing. But it's also, I think, educating the citizenry about how what is the most effective way? We tend to say, just call your town councilor, but I think there's really a lot of difficulty understanding how it works in town. And so I'm personally interested not only in following what happens to these these non-charter related recommendations coming out of the charter review, because this has been such a rich discussion, but also trying to preserve and maintain the citizen engagement and understanding of what's happening over time. And I think that deserves.
Great. Thanks, Nancy. Thanks for that. I wanted to ask Leo if you might offer a comment about that, Leo, because you said at the beginning of your comments that communication was so important, so critical. And in your time here, you've gotten to know people on a personal level, and that obviously helps you kind of stay in touch with, what's going on that you care about. What advice would you give to either the town government or residents about how to keep track of all these things that people put their hand up or come to a meeting or make a recommendation, and then maybe something happens and people don't know what happened to it? You never, maybe often don't hear about it again. What would be some of your advice be about that?
We've had a ton of big meetings in the last year, and all of them done remotely. There's just been so many meetings going on that it's hard for anybody to keep up with it all, especially when you don't have time. The councils they have meetings every night, and all of them big meetings. So there's been so much going on, and it's hard. But how do you get involved? You're persistent. You have to be persistent. Things have not moved fast. You just have to be persistent and stick with it. And I think if you stick long enough, sometimes you get success. Success is measured very small, and that's in some areas, at least what I've been pushing for. But I think with the voices that you folks have put together, I think it's been noticed, and I think changes will happen. I think in regard to what Marcy asked for, it's already in our ordinance. Section 6.1 allows you to do that already in the ordinance, doesn't require a change. I just think if persistence pays off, and I know that if we don't get anything done this time, there's 5 more years before we do it. We could do it again. I think that's what my comment was. We do it again in 5 years. So I think we've come a long way. I think the current charter was lacking, but I think it's just persistence. You got to stick to your guns and just keep trying.
Okay, well, that's helpful. I think persistence on an individual level, and as you pointed out, some of what we as residents have been trying to do through Watertown Forward and others is have some organizational infrastructure within the residents of the town to keep an eye on things that people care about. So let me go back to Tiffany. I see Alana's hand up. Is she the next person in the queue? Or
Larry, before we transition topics, there's a lot of movement in the chat, and I just don't want certain topics to get lost related to this conversation.
Do you want to comment on a few things in the chat, Janice? Go ahead.
I just want to sort of dovetail that, because both John Gannon and Nicole Gardner had mentioned that a simple solution to that problem might just be using a tracking board of some sort on the website to capture, like a legislative tracking board, to capture all of these referrals. And there are other towns that have used them. Nicole, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I would say absolutely to have a tracking board, but not only forcing us to have to go find that information and chase it. We have this great Instagram account now, which is wonderful. When something happens that's relevant on an ordinance, that should be one of the things that's posted on that Instagram account for interested people. Ditto on the Facebook page. There are ways to push the information out, or using Notify Me for people who are interested in either a particular ordinance or ordinances in general. So for us to have to persistently chase, I think technology is so much more empowering now to enable the town council and our government to share relevant information with us. So I think this is a simple problem to solve, to be honest.
What about our infrastructure? We have some new people in town who have some responsibilities for website and communication and so on. I'm wondering if some of that is within their set of responsibilities to implement.
It is, and I think I'm just encouraging us to think about a philosophical change, which is come chase us, to let us make it available to you. We will push the information that's relevant to you. You can always opt out. You don't have to go to our Instagram account, whatever it might be, but let's make it easy for people, and that will, will engage them more. That would be my perspective. On that.
And I think hopefully people have seen that change in the last, since Chris McClure has come on. I mean, one thing in you know, every time something about the website comes up, I can hear Susan Falcoff in my head, because Susan Falcoff complained about the town website for so long, and she had a point. And so I think in the short time Chris has been here, he's done a really good job of trying to, you know, catch us up to where we should have been 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And now he's, you know, in the process of getting us to be where we should be today. And I think as you see more people come on in his department, I think we're going to get to be where where we should be, and to the point where we, to your point, Nicole, we're pushing info as opposed to people having to find it. In addition to that, you know, one of Tony's committees, media and public outreach, is working on town council newsletter. I mean, there's all in conjunction with Chris McClure. So I think there are a lot of things that are in process now that are going to help us achieve that. I can't say enough good things about Chris McClure. I mean, I think he's so responsive to counselors, to residents. He responds to emails on the weekends, after hours. So I think now that he's being able to build out his staff, I think we're going to get there, and I hopefully we'll get there sooner than later.
Thanks, Anthony. Ilana, your comments, questions?
Yes, thank you. 4 specific items that several people submitted were on various proposals, including mine, that seem to have gotten just like pushed off the end of the agendas. And I'd like to know if and when they're please going to get addressed. One was changing the makeup of the Charter Review Commission for the next time. Big issue, you know, who's on it and how are they selected. 2, changing the timing of the charter reviews. 3, what specific requirements the town needs to do to get ready for the next, they're really all related, but to get ready for the next charter review, as in getting the information out there and getting both the people who are selected to be on the commission and the general public prepared for it. And again, I know these are all in proposals that have been submitted. And the 4th thing is just changing the name of our municipality, which has been thrown around lots of times, but it's like gotten lost in the shuffle. It's what agenda if we've only got 2 meetings left? Where is this going to happen?
Okay, so just in the interest of time, I'll ask for maybe a quick response. Then we have one final question we want to put in front of our panelists as we wrap up. And then we got a couple other quick things to do after that. So if one of you could just offer a thought about when will the CRC and the charter review process itself be addressed by the CRC?
I think next meeting, I think we should go over this. It was touched upon briefly at the last meeting regarding the makeup of the board, and it will not be the same as it is now. It will be much more resident based, and much less counselors. I mean, I think if we have 7 to 9 members, 2 to 3 counselors tops. So I think that'll be discussed next meeting. I think that's an agenda for next meeting.
Okay.
And the other issues, Leo?
The next charter review, I wrote in my comments that I think in the year ending in 6. So that would be 5 years from now.
Okay.
That's Leo's opinion. I mean, and it hasn't been voted on, but it will be voted on at some point.
Okay, so we don't have time to get into the content of that recommendation, but it sounds like it is a topic that will be addressed.
And our name?
Oh,
Is
yeah,
that gonna-
city. It's a city. We'll
Okay,
have to work on that. I don't know when that's going to come up.
So keep at it, Ilana. I think people will continue to hear from you on this matter.
Yeah.
Thanks for that. What we'd like to do in the last couple minutes for this part of it, just before we do a final wrap up, is we wanted to just get a closing comment from each of our panelists today about the following. This, as we know, has been a challenging year to undertake a charter review. The CRC has been working hard. Many residents have tried to stay actively involved. What are each of your thoughts regarding the level of participation in the charter review you've seen so far? And how can residents continue to feel that they have a voice in this process? And this is less than 5 minutes. So this is like a minute. So if you just give kind of your top line thoughts about how the public participation has gone and how can residents continue to feel they have a voice. And either of you can get us, take the lead on that.
I guess I can go, Anthony, if you don't mind. I think participation has been, you've stirred up a lot of folks, and so I know when at the beginning you had hundreds of people involved, and I know it's dropped off. From what I understand, the last charter review had 10 people that may have gone to attendance in the council chambers. So this opportunity, this Zoom opportunity, allows many more people to come. We've had a busy year. We've had a lot of big meetings. We've had the CPC meetings. We've had the public safety meetings. We had meetings on mass vulnerability, and the school buildings have taken up so many meetings with a lot of people. So and I think if you go to any of these other meetings, you'll see a lot of people in town have that interest and go to these meetings, and it takes time. And you may not get to all of them, but there's a lot of people that go to those meetings. So we do have a community that goes to these meetings, just not enough. I mean, I think we're a community of 35,000 people, and you have 20 people today. If you were on our charter review meetings might have 30 people at it. We have 30,000 residents. We just don't have enough. We don't have enough for our boards. We need more involvement for people, and I don't know how to make that happen, but we need to get more people involved. And it's a dynamic town. We have a lot of great things going for us. That's why people want to live here. So I just think we need to get a more broad spectrum of people to get involved. So
Thanks very much, Leo. Thank you. Anthony?
So this is my first time being involved in a charter review, but what Mr. Martin just said is everything I've heard about the previous, 2, if not 3 reviews that have occurred, where there's been a handful of people who actually showed up for meetings. So the level of involvement in this go around just seems to blow everything else out of the water. And I think it's completely due to the efforts of this group. And I think not only for the people who come to these meetings you hold on the weekends, but then come to the actual charter review meetings themselves, but your group also extends well beyond that circle of people. So I think that it's the level of involvement compared to a lot of the other topics that I've been involved with on my time on the council. It's really been amazing. I think obviously COVID came at a tough time because it shortened this review. I think going forward, rather than think of this as a review to be wrapped up in a 1 year, I think you really need to look at it as actually a 2-year review. Use the whole term of a council. One thing that I think is going to be interesting moving forward, and I think all levels of government are going to have some growing pains figuring out, is as the pandemic subsides and hopefully everybody gets vaccinated and we go back to meeting in person, how do we still allow for remote involvement? Because I think that's the one good thing that's come out of the pandemic, is a lot more people are able to engage. If you weren't able to drive to town hall at 7, 8 o'clock at night on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, but if you could log on at home while you're making dinner or feeding your kids, it's really allowed for a much greater level of involvement. So I think it will be interesting to try to maneuver that to make sure we figure out a way that works. I know personally, before COVID, I never had a computer with me in the council chamber. It was always just me, the paperwork for that meeting, and my legal pad of paper, because I want to be just focused in the moment on what we're working on. So I'm hoping that there's going to be a way, and I know that they are working on it, that there'll be a way that one of the TVs in the council chamber will be like the dedicated Zoom feed or whatever else, so that hopefully we can, figure out a way to marry those two. Because I also don't want to have headphones in at every meeting to make sure I can hear what people are saying, and then you get the feedback issues when one person is on them and another is not. So it's been unbelievably awesome. Again, it's credit to this group and your members. And then I think, hopefully we working together, we'll figure out a way to, again, marry that in-person participation and the remote participation so we can maximize the number of residents in town who are able to, stay involved, stay current with what's going on. And, maybe that helps us with the, the pushing of information, where if we make it easier for people to be involved, there's less legwork they need to do to understand what's going on.
Thanks. Thanks for that. So I'd like to thank both of you for your time today on a Sunday afternoon and for your insights and your perspectives. Very valuable to all of us. And thanks again for your work in the community and on the Charter Review Committee. And I will, it was all a virtual, we can do real applause here, even though we're on Zoom. And I'd like to turn it over to Janice, who will do a few things to wrap up today.
All right. So thank you again, Leo and Anthony and everybody here in attendance today. We really appreciate you sticking it out. This has been a long process, and we're glad to still see your faces every other Sunday. That said, I would encourage all of you to attend CRC meetings as a priority moving forward, given the timeline and what's happening content-wise during the meetings. And Watertown Forward will shift to, for anyone who wasn't here earlier in the meeting, to the Sunday before the CRC meetings versus the Sunday following, in order to help folks prepare for the CRC meeting so they can put some energy and their voice behind issues that they care about. So Nicole, if you want to throw up the slide that has the upcoming events, just so people have a quick glance at which events are coming up and when, but I'll just tell you verbally for now. The next two Charter Review Committee meetings will be Tuesday, June 15th. Oh, here we go.
Sorry. I thought
That's
okay. I apologize.
No worries. We're flexible here at Watertown Forward. The next two Charter Review Committee meetings are Tuesday, June 15th and June 29th at 6 p.m. And I believe they are planning to go until 9. I'm not sure if that's official, but I will say just kind of budget that time because it has been going over. There's a lot to discuss. Please show up and raise your voice. Whether or not there's a chat open, I encourage you to just unmute and raise your hand if the chat's not open. But keep the pressure on the CRC committee to open that chat back up and get those participant lists available to us. The next charter chat, this is really important, will be Sunday, June 27th. There will not be a charter chat on the 20th as originally planned. We are switching up the order. So I will make sure this is on Facebook multiple times and in our MailChimp as well. Please continue to attend preamble subcommittee meetings. The next meeting is tomorrow, Monday, June 7th at 5:30. A lot of great work happening there. I'm excited to see that draft. There are no meetings planned at this time for the communications subcommittee, but Marcia usually and John will sort of update us at the next CRC meeting as anything is planned or scheduled. And then of course, as always, please contact Watertown Forward and sign up for emails. If you would like to be on our list, you can put your email in the chat or just send us an email at forwardwatertown@gmail.com. Visit our webpage, which is being changed and updated pretty much daily at watertownforward.org, and join our Facebook group, not the page, but the group. That's where we're putting all of our updates now. For any changes, again, just with everything sort of moving very quickly at this point and some level of uncertainty, we're going to be updating you more frequently on those platforms. So watch the space, and thank you again. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. And we hope to see you at the next CRC meeting and then at the next charter chat.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a nice night.
Thanks, Anthony.
Thanks, Anthony. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Stay cool.
Yeah. You too, Connie.
Nicole, I think you can stop screen sharing and then we
Thank
won't
you.
have that
And I
to
will
look at. There we go.
Recording also.
Oh, good. Can I request a brief bio break? I've had far too much coffee to make it through.
Go girl.